It is easy to be consumed by the circumstances of the moment, to feel as though life is unfolding in ways that are beyond our control, as though everything around us is falling apart. In times of struggle, when the road ahead appears uncertain, it can be difficult to see the hand of God at work. Yet, even in these moments of apparent chaos, God is busy at work, rearranging everything in our favor, orchestrating the events of our lives in ways that we cannot always understand at the time. We may not see it now, but in His perfect wisdom, He is aligning the pieces of our lives, preparing us for something greater, and setting the stage for His divine purpose to unfold. The notion of God rearranging everything in our favor is one of immense comfort and hope. It is a reminder that despite our limited understanding, God is not only aware of our circumstances, but He is actively working behind the scenes to turn them to good. We often look at our lives and wonder why things seem out of place, why opportunities appear to slip through our fingers, or why we are faced with challenges that seem insurmountable. But what we cannot see in the moment is that these very challenges, these disruptions, are often the means by which God is setting us up for greater blessings. When God is rearranging things in our favor, it may not always look how we expect. His methods are not always immediate or obvious. We are accustomed to seeing results quickly, to measuring success in terms of instant gratification. But God's ways are far greater than our ways, and His timing is perfect. Sometimes the rearranging happens in ways that feel uncomfortable, even painful, as if things are falling apart. Yet in reality, it is only when the old structures are broken down that new opportunities can emerge, fresh possibilities can arise, and divine connections can take place. Trusting in the process of God's rearranging work requires a shift in perspective. We must move from seeing our struggles and disruptions as setbacks to recognizing them as part of God's greater plan, a plan that is being carefully crafted for our benefit. We may not always understand why things are happening as they are, but we can trust that God, in His infinite wisdom, is orchestrating our lives with purpose and care. He is not distant or detached. He is actively involved in the details of our lives, guiding us with love and leading us toward the future He has prepared for us. To begin, trusting the divine process requires a deep understanding that God is always working, even when we cannot see it. Our lives, with all their messiness, their highs and lows, are part of a greater design. We often find ourselves in moments of confusion, wondering why things aren't working as we expect, why certain doors seem closed, and why challenges arise that seem to undo the very progress we've worked for. These disruptions, however, are not random. They are not signs of abandonment, but part of the divine arrangement that is being crafted for our good. It is in these moments of disruption that God is at work, realigning our lives in ways that are unseen and unexpected. Our instinct is to resist change, to cling to the familiar, and to fight against the uncertainty that comes with it. Yet, when we look at life from a divine perspective, we come to realize that these very disruptions are the beginning of something new. Just as an artist must sometimes scrape away a layer of paint to reveal the masterpiece beneath, God often must remove certain things from our lives, whether they are relationships, circumstances, or even our own plans, so that He can create space for something far better. This process of rearranging is not always comfortable, and it is often accompanied by a sense of loss or confusion. We may feel as though we are losing ground, as though things are falling apart. But this is where faith comes in. Trusting in the divine process means knowing that God is not only aware of our circumstances, but that He is actively involved in every detail of our lives. Even when we cannot see the outcome, we can trust that He is working everything together for our good. Disruptions are simply God's way of reshaping our path, redirecting us toward His perfect plan. When we face these disruptions with faith rather than fear, we can begin to see God's hand at work. He is not a distant God, observing us from afar. He is intimately involved in every moment of our lives, rearranging the pieces in a way that will ultimately lead us to the blessings He has in store. Trusting in the divine process is about surrendering control, allowing God to be the master craftsman, and knowing that He is always working, even when we cannot see it. The power of perspective lies in the ability to see things as they truly are, not as we perceive them through the narrow lens of our immediate circumstances. When we face disruptions, challenges, and moments of loss, it's easy to become consumed by frustration, disappointment, or confusion. Our emotions can cloud our judgment, leading us to think that things are not going the way they should or that life is unfair. However, if we shift our perspective and begin to look at our lives from the vantage point of God's divine plan, we begin to see that even the most difficult moments are part of a much larger picture. God's hand is at work in every situation, not just the easy ones, not just the victories, but in the setbacks, the heartaches, and the unanswered prayers. It is often in the moments of struggle that God's presence is most profoundly felt. When we are in the midst of the storm, we may not be able to see the calm that is coming, but if we can trust that God is leading us, we will begin to recognize His presence in the process. What is required, however, is a shift in perspective, a decision to see things through the eyes of faith, not fear. When we look at our lives through the lens of God's eternal purpose, we begin to understand that every situation, no matter how challenging, has a role in shaping us for the future He has prepared. It is in the difficult moments that we are most often refined, that our character is built, and that we are made ready for the blessings God is preparing for us. This shift in perspective is not always easy, especially when we are in the midst of hardship. But it is through this process that we begin to grow in trust. It is through the challenges that we learn to rely not on our own strength, but on God's. We begin to understand that our circumstances are not the result of random chance, but of God's sovereign will at work in our lives. Even when we cannot see the end result, we can trust that He is guiding us, rearranging the pieces of our lives in a way that will ultimately lead us to a place of fulfillment and purpose. To truly see God's hand in every situation, we must learn to embrace the unknown. The very nature of God's work in our lives often requires that we step into the unknown, trusting that He will reveal the next step at the right time. The blessings that are ahead may not be visible to us in the present, but we must trust that God is always at work behind the scenes, preparing us for something far greater than we can imagine. Embracing change is perhaps one of the most profound challenges we face as human beings. Change, by its very nature, demands that we let go of the familiar and step into the unknown. It disrupts our comfort zones, shakes our sense of security, and often leaves us feeling vulnerable. And yet, when we look at the greater purpose behind change, we begin to realize that it is not something to fear, but something to embrace. Change, especially when guided by God, is often the very thing that prepares us for the greater blessings we have yet to experience. Many of us resist change because it feels like a loss, whether it's the loss of a familiar routine, a relationship, or a vision for our future. But the truth is that, in God's economy, loss is often a precursor to gain. When God begins to rearrange our lives, it may appear that we are losing something important, but what we may not see is that He is clearing the way for something far greater. Just as a gardener prunes a tree to encourage more fruitful growth, God sometimes has to remove things from our lives that are preventing us from reaching our full potential. These losses, as painful as they may be in the moment, are not without purpose. So they are part of the process that prepares us for the greater blessings that God has in store. When we face setbacks, we may wonder why things aren't working out as we hoped, why our efforts seem to go unrewarded, or why we are facing challenges that seem insurmountable. But these setbacks are not signs of failure. They are God's way of redirecting us. The detours we encounter are not accidents. They are part of the divine plan, designed to lead us to a place of greater growth, greater understanding, and greater blessing. For what we see as a setback is often, in reality, a setup for something more. God uses the very things that seem to hold us back to propel us forward into His plans for us. The key to embracing change is to trust that God knows what He is doing. When we let go of our own plans and surrender to His, we begin to see that His timing is always perfect. What may seem like a delay is actually an opportunity for God to prepare us for what lies ahead. We may not understand why things are happening as they are, but when we trust in His process, we begin to see that He is setting us up for something far greater than we could ever have imagined. The greater blessings that God has for us are often hidden behind the veil of change, and it is through embracing that change that we step into the fullness of His plan for our lives. To embrace change is to accept that God is always working, even when we cannot see it. It is to trust that the changes in our lives are not random or meaningless, but part of a greater design. Each setback, each disappointment, each challenge is an opportunity for us to grow in trust, to grow in faith, and to grow in the assurance that God is rearranging everything in our favor. The change that we resist is often the very thing that prepares us for the blessings that we long for. Aligning with God's timing is a lesson that many of us struggle with, particularly in a world that prizes instant results and immediate gratification. We live in a time when speed is valued above all else. We want answers, solutions, and results now. Yet in the divine economy, timing is everything. God does not operate according to the clock that we keep in our hands or the calendar that we mark in our hearts. His timing is perfect, and it is in learning to align with that timing that we find true peace and fulfillment in our lives. The process of rearranging our lives often involves waiting for the right moment, waiting for the right people, and waiting for the right opportunities. During this waiting period, it can be tempting to become anxious, frustrated, or impatient. We may wonder why things are taking so long, or why we seem to be stuck in a particular season of life. But what we fail to see in these moments is that God is not only working behind the scenes, but He is also preparing us for the next step. His timing is never late, and it is never early. It is always precisely when we need it most. When we align ourselves with God's timing, we acknowledge that He knows what is best for us, and that He will not give us something before we are ready to receive it. Just as a seed must go through a process of growth before it can bear fruit, so too must we go through a process of preparation before we can step into the fullness of the blessings God has prepared for us. So, in the waiting, God is molding us, shaping us, and building our character so that we can handle the very blessings we desire. This alignment with God's timing is not always easy. We live in a culture that tells us to hurry up, to make things happen, to take control of our own destiny. But God's ways are not our ways. His timing is perfect, even when it doesn't make sense to us. He knows what we need when we need it, and He is never in a rush. He is preparing us for something far greater than we can see in the present moment. And when the time is right, He will release the blessings that He has been preparing for us all along. To align with God's timing is to trust that He is not only in control of the big events in our lives, but also the small, seemingly insignificant moments. Every detail is part of His divine plan, and every delay, every detour is part of His process of rearranging our lives in a way that will bring about His perfect will. Trusting in God's timing means surrendering our need for control, letting go of our own plans, and allowing Him to lead us in His perfect way. When we learn to trust and align with God's timing, we will come to understand the beautiful purpose behind the rearranging. What we may perceive as delays or disruptions are, in fact, divine appointments. God is not wasting a single moment of our lives. He is using every circumstance, every challenge, every waiting season to shape us and prepare us for what is to come. And when the time is right, He will bring everything into alignment, and the blessings that He has been preparing for us will be revealed in ways that will leave us in awe of His goodness. This heading is a natural extension of everything we have discussed so far, but it brings us to the crucial point of hope, the kind of hope that rises even in the face of uncertainty and fear. Trusting that the best is yet to come is about believing in the promise of a future that is better than our past and present. It's a radical act of faith that requires us to release our grip on the past and on the way we thought things were supposed to unfold. We must trust that God in His divine wisdom has something greater ahead for us, even when we cannot see it. The unknown is a place of potential, yet for most of us, the unknown is also a place of discomfort, where doubts and fears take root. But when we view the unknown through the lens of God's promise, we begin to understand that it is not a place of danger, but a place of opportunity. It is in the unknown that God often works the most powerfully, breaking through our limitations and stretching our faith. The unknown is the place where new blessings can come into our lives, where God can reveal new paths, new relationships, and new opportunities that we could not have imagined. Trusting that the best is yet to come does not mean ignoring our present reality or pretending that our challenges do not exist. It means believing that no matter how difficult things may seem now, God is leading us towards something greater. Every hardship we face, every struggle we endure, is preparing us for the blessings ahead. The rearview mirror of our lives can often deceive us into thinking that the best is behind us, that we have missed our opportunity for greatness or fulfillment. But God's plans are always forward-moving, and He has only just begun to reveal what He has in store for us. When we trust that the best is yet to come, we begin to view our current circumstances with a sense of expectancy rather than resignation. Resignation. We begin to see our challenges as stepping stones, not stumbling blocks. Our losses are not final, but part of the journey toward a better, brighter future. By trusting in God's timing and His process, we open ourselves up to the endless possibilities that lie ahead. We learn to embrace the unknown with a heart full of hope, knowing that God's plan for our lives is far greater than we could have ever dreamed. In conclusion, God is always at work in our lives even when we cannot see it. He is constantly rearranging, redirecting, and refining us, preparing us for the greater blessings that are ahead. The process of change, though difficult at times, is a vital part of our spiritual journey. It is through this process that we grow, mature, and become the people God has created us to be. When we learn to trust the divine process, shift our perspective, embrace change, align with God's timing, and trust that the best is yet to come, we begin to see that every disruption, every setback, and every challenge is a step toward the greater purpose God has for us. We may not always understand why things happen the way they do, but we can trust that God is in control. He is not only aware of our circumstances, but is actively shaping them for our good. Even when we can't see the full picture, we can trust that He is rearranging everything in our favor. The future He has for us is bright, filled with opportunities, and greater than we can imagine. As we walk through life, let us hold fast to the hope that God's plan is always good, and that in His perfect timing, He will bring everything together for our benefit. Trust the process and trust that the best is yet to come. In conclusion, we find ourselves standing at a crossroads between the past and the future, uncertain of what lies ahead, yet certain that God is leading us towards something greater. The process of life, with all its challenges, changes, and disruptions, is not random. Every moment, every setback, every season of waiting is a part of a divine design that is unfolding perfectly, even when we cannot see it. God is actively rearranging, realigning, and refining our lives to prepare us for the blessings He has already set in motion. When we trust that God is at work behind the scenes, we begin to embrace change, not as a threat, but as an opportunity. We learn to shift our perspective and see every moment, no matter how difficult, as a step towards something greater. Even when we cannot understand why things are happening the way they are, we can rest in the assurance that God's timing is always perfect, and His plan is always for our good. Through every disruption and delay, God is leading us to a new chapter of life, one that holds greater joy, peace, and fulfillment than we could have ever imagined. The key is to trust the process, to align ourselves with God's timing, and to hold on to the hope that the best is yet to come. His rearranging of our lives is not a sign of abandonment, but of His deep love and commitment to our ultimate good. As we continue on this journey, let us remember that our lives are not our own to control. They are in the hands of a loving Creator who knows exactly what He is doing. Though we may face uncertainties and challenges, we can be confident that God is leading us towards something magnificent. Trust the process, trust His timing, and trust that the best is truly yet to come.